So I want to welcome all of you. I'm Nancy Zimpher. I have the privilege of being the Chancellor of the State University of New York, and I am joined here by Chairperson Carl Hayden, and we wish to welcome you and to celebrate the moment. Obviously, the celebration is about the publishing of the Landmarks of New York 5th edition. And of course, we are fortunate, most fortunate, to be joined this evening by Barbaralee Diamonstein-Spielvogel and her lovely, weighty 5th edition of the Landmarks of New York. And especially proud as well because of her partnership with our esteemed trustee, Ambassador Carl Spielvogel. So we are delighted, Barbaralee, to have you in our presence, and we've got a few things to say about you. So just kick back and relax, and we will take care of things. It is my great privilege to lend a little airtime to Chairman Hayden, but I wanted you to know the great array of SUNY trustees that we have with us tonight. So I'm going to call out their names, and then you can give them a rousing cheer as I conclude the list. So joining Trustee and Chair Carl Hayden is Carl McCall, Joe Bellick, Ron Ehrenberg, Steve Hunt, Eunice Lewin, Carrie Stoller, Jerry Warren Merrick, John Murad, Ken O'Brien, Caitlin Beecher, and Tina Good. They have all come to celebrate in behalf of you, Barbaralee. So thank you, trustees. I also certainly want to acknowledge the leadership of SUNY Press, the co-directorship of Donna Dixon and James Peltz, who have facilitated this and so many important SUNY Press publications. I'm very pleased that in the lobby of this remarkable building, we have a regular display of SUNY Press editions. And I have to say, I stop by every once in a while, lift one up and say, you know, I need to read that book, or I need to send that book to one of my friends. It just keeps happening. And my personal relationship, Barbaralee, with SUNY Press goes back to a book that my husband and I wrote in 1987, and who knew that we would be celebrating together the work of SUNY Press today. So I want to acknowledge the senior production editor, Lori Cyril, who has been, well, okay, cheers for Lori. So her instrumentality in getting the Landmarks of New York's 5th edition out today for our enjoyment and edification. And I know that Laura Safaris is here loaning her work of Albany to this event. And I know that from the support of the Historic Albany Foundation, there are people here who are deeply committed to historic preservation. And I think you will hear Barbaralee talk about the intent to lift up historic preservation across the state. We are represented this evening by Dennis McDermott, who is representing J.P. Morgan Chase and sponsor of this exhibition. We are expecting Commissioner John King from the New York State Education Department. Many of you saw Mayor Jerry Jennings, who came through. I believe he got an autograph, Barbaralee, and a great fan of our author tonight. A really special opportunity for so many people. We're happy as well to have Jay DiLorenzo, the Executive Director of the Preservation League of New York, here tonight, and we want to thank Jay as well. So before I say more about our esteemed author, I really want to yield the floor to Chairperson Carl Hayden, his leadership of the SUNY Board, and quite frankly, his affection for Barbaralee and this work. Carl Hayden. Carl?
Well, Barbaralee, thank you so much for sharing your elegant, distinguished husband with us. That's he adds an element of refinement that has been sorely wanting on this board. Mr. Ambassador, it's wonderful of you to share this immensely talented woman with us.
Only tonight.
And SUNY Press could not be more pleased. This is a real feather in our cap. I shared earlier with Barbaralee some observations that I'll do my best to reprise now. I'm a great fan of Robert Caro, and the Archives Partnership Trust, of which Barbara is a trustee, have succeeded in getting Mr. Caro to be the featured speaker at an event later on this year. Caro's first book, the thing for which he was initially best known before he started writing about Lyndon Johnson, was The Power Broker, a book about Robert Moses. And I don't know why he keeps writing about all these unpleasant people all the time, but ultimately that book is really a vivid demonstration of the power of creative destruction. Some of it thoughtful, some of it thoughtless. And what it reminds us of is that things vanish, sometimes for a salutary reason, sometimes for no reason at all, sometimes just as a function of waste, and sometimes as a function of neglect, and sometimes as an expression of good intentions. But these things go away, these things that we took to be vital and took to be landmarks and took to be the signs and symbols of our civilization. They're not guaranteed to be here forever. If I had to have an arbiter of who is going to preserve for us the things that demonstrate the vitality of this great urban society, it would be Barbara Diamonstein-Spielvogel that I would choose to make those choices. And she has done that so brilliantly, and we thank you, Barbara.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Carl. You know, he's just the king of eloquence. I just can't, what can I say? Just wonderful. And speaking of which, I don't know a more magnificent name than that caused by the merger of the ambassador and Barbaralee Diamonstein. It just rolls right off the tongue, and I have had a lot of opportunity to practice. So I do want to say more about Barbaralee, but I just, in a paragraph, I think the announcement of the publication of the 5th edition of the Landmarks of New York really says it all. In this book, Diamonstein-Spielvogel has meticulously compiled the definitive resource on the architectural history of New York City. Thoroughly revised and updated, the book documents 1,276 individual landmarks and 102 historic districts with care and precision. In addition to completely updated maps and descriptions of each landmark and historic district included in the previous editions, the 5th edition adds 183 new individual landmarks and photos and 39 new historic district maps and descriptions of these historic districts. The weight of this volume does speak to the additions created by the 5th edition. So let me say a word about our Barbaralee Diamonstein-Spielvogel. Author, highly respected, nationally renowned writer, interview, and activist in the fields of architecture and the arts, chairperson of the Historic Landmarks Preservation Center and vice chair of the New York State Council on the Arts, among many other impressive roles within the cultural fabric of New York. First director of the Office of Cultural Affairs of New York City and longest-serving commissioner of the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission from 1972 to 1987. First woman vice chair of the U.S. Commission on Fine Arts, and Barbaralee Diamonstein-Spielvogel will be receiving the annual Landmarks Lion Award from the Historic Districts Council of New York City. What a pleasure to inaugurate a series of tours across this great state where she alone will lift up the magic of our historic preservation in every community in which she visits. Please join me in welcoming Barbaralee Diamonstein-Spielvogel. That's you. That's-
Thank you, Chancellor Zimpher. Thank you, Chairman Hayden, for your very generous words. They mean a great deal to me, especially coming from the two of you. And thanks to each and all of you for joining us here tonight for this inaugural event of the celebrating the landmarks of New York at its first venue of the 11-city museum tour throughout New York State. Chancellor Zimpher, as usual, is quite correct. It is a weighty book. I've been told 6.3 pounds. My warmest thanks do go to Chancellor Nancy Zimpher, not only the host today, but the enabler of this entire project. Without her vision and encouragement, it would not be possible to have this project take place. Her involvement has meant everything to the hoped-for result of reinforcing the importance of the interrelationship of preservation, revitalization, renewal, and economic and cultural vitality. Without your encouragement and support throughout this project, it just would not have been possible. Thank you, Chancellor Zimpher. At each venue, we have asked the local community to prepare an ancillary exhibit to ratify their local efforts or describe the conditions that exist. I'm happy to tell you that Ms. Safaris has a wonderful exhibit, but a sad one, because it is all about endangered Albany. I'm happy to say that the mayor had an opportunity to see it before he left. Her photographs and the very telling description from some of the finest architects, not only in Albany, but in American history, are the architects of these buildings. And I must say, I was ebullient when I arrived. When I finished reading the descriptions, I was indeed saddened. So I ask you, persons who live and work here, to please read those and please support Historic Albany. And you will hear briefly from the executive director who has helped arrange this, Susan Holland. My warmest thanks for this exhibition taking place not only here, but in the 10 following venues throughout New York State, go to Chase and J.P. Morgan Chase, represented here tonight, and thank you for coming as well. My appreciation goes to Gary Dunham, who was the acquiring editor of the Landmarks of New York book, and to his successors, James Peltz and Donna Dixon, the current co-editors of the SUNY Press. And warm thanks to the first-rate art editor, where are you, Laurie Searle? There would be no book without you, of this large and demanding volume. It does have 1,276 photos and 103 maps. Please raise your hand, Laurie, so people can see that you are still smiling. Thank you, Laurie. And still smiling. To the Preservation League of New York State, the Office of Parks and Recreation and Historic Preservation of New York State, the New York Historical Society, together with the Historic Landmarks Preservation Commission, co-sponsors of this fine exhibit. My special thanks, but none more so than to distinguished service professor, a title he well deserves, Joe Hildreth, for installing the exhibit. Thank you, Joe. The history of New York can be told through its architecture And this book and exhibit have been organized chronologically by date of construction, and as they unfold, so to some measure does the history of New York. Preservationists have long understood the benefits of protecting the past from destruction, not only so that future generations can envision the past and experience the magic of stepping back in time, but because preservation provides a sense of continuity between past and present and an appreciation of the accomplishments of those who came before us and outlast the individual life as well. In New York City, the Landmarks Law was passed in 1965 after an outcry by the public citizenry. So this preservation movement, in which I am so involved and of which I am so proud, and as I mentioned earlier, after the great movements of this century, civil rights, human rights, gay rights, there is no greater aggregation than those persons involved in historic preservation of every age group and every socioeconomic group. They have banded together in a collaboration to make certain the places where they live and work and shop and play are improved. And if you go to New York City in these past years, there are now, even since this book, and that is why we have a digital edition as well to keep it up to date, there are 1,291 individual landmarks in each of the 5 boroughs. There are now 105 historic districts comprising 28,000 properties. And these are some of the most expensive real estate on earth that come under the jurisdiction of the Landmarks Preservation Commission. Some of them are in areas that were not discovered until recently. But if you visit New York City, and I think every city must know that tourism, economic development, and culture all go together for the economic vitality of where they live and work and shop and play. There are also, in 1978, it was deemed appropriate that scenic landmarks be designated. And the first great planned public park in America, in 1857, Central Park, was designated. Central Park, 843 acres, nearly 3 miles of parkland, larger than the entire Mediterranean municipality of Monaco, the second smallest country on earth. Central Park is larger than that. It is often called the lungs of New York City. I call it the heart and soul of New York City. Every park bench, every shrub, every statue, every walkway, every bridge, every body of water in that park comprises one of the 10 designated landmarks. This has happened not only because of a Landmarks Commission, but the combination of the public and private sector. It is aroused citizenry that must band together in their concern for civic pride. That is my sermon for today. So my thanks to each and all of you for coming. It is my privilege to be the recipient of the generosity of the State University of New York, the largest state university in the country, and now on its way to being the most scholastically excellent state university in the country. Thank you all.
Well, we are absolutely graced by your presence, Barbaralee, and all the people who've come to admire. On behalf of the exhibit itself and all the hard work of Joe Hildreth and company, we invite you to to spread out and go literally from one end of this wonderful hall of flags to the other, looking at the exhibit of photography. And by the way, it's not as heavy, so you can walk leisurely and carry a little libation. I did want to recognize Senator Ken Laval, who is with us this evening. We're delighted, Senator, to have you. Thank you very much. Trust me, he's over here. And he will be joined as well by Assemblymember Deborah Glick. You know that the Senator and the Assemblymember chair our Senate and Assembly Higher Education Committees with whom we have done such fine work. And I just thank you again, Senator, for being with us, and Assemblymember. I do hope that you will enjoy more time with us. I just want to quote, standing next to Trustee Eunice Lewin, what a proud moment for SUNY Press to be able to present the 5th edition of the Landmarks of New York. Thank you very much and enjoy the evening.